Good evening. Welcome to Montclair State's first virtual wine tasting. I'm Karen Hackett, Associate Director, Alumni Engagement. It's my pleasure to have you here this evening. It's wonderful to have so many alumni and friends with us, and I want to offer a special welcome to the class of 2020. Graduates, thanks for joining, and following the presentation, we'll raise a glass to you. All our alumni and friends, you play such an important role in our future. You can be involved in so many ways. You can mentor a student, speak in a class, or attend an event to build your network. I also want to note that we're thankful for your support, especially during this time of our students. Recently, we participated in Giving Tuesday Now. You helped raise nearly $20,000 in much needed funds for two initiatives, the Student Emergency Fund and the Mix Lab, which produced PPE masks for frontline healthcare workers. These are such important initiatives. We are grateful for your continued support. And if you haven't already, please join the Montclair, or rather the new Montclair Connect online community. This new platform allows you to flash mentor a student, and it's a great opportunity to connect with fellow alumni. A network of, get this, 130,000 alumni. So you can learn about all the benefits available to you there. So check your inbox for that invitation to join the online community, and check for our weekly email on Monday. We'll send out a listing of events coming up during the week. All right, so I'm pleased to welcome our guest presenters tonight. We have Marnie Winslow. Marnie is the New Jersey Field Sales Manager for Dow Family Estates. She's worked in the wine business for 18 years and has been fortunate enough to visit vineyards around the globe, but believes she's never seen anywhere as beautiful as Dow's Mountaintop Winery in Paso Robles. We also have James Wallace. James is a regional manager for J-Lore Vineyards and Wines with more than 19 years experience in the business, and he covers New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Lastly, we have Shane Guerriere. Shane is the marketing manager for Hope Family Wines, covering New York and New Jersey, and has over 20 years experience. It was while working in the restaurant business during college that he was first introduced to Paso Robles and Austin Hope Wine, and he believes all wine is best enjoyed in good company. So just a little housekeeping. Our presenters will take questions in between the tastings, but we'll reserve the end of the presentation for formal Q&A. And to ask questions, just use your Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And as a reminder, the event is being recorded. So with that, I will turn it over to our presenters. Shane, kick us off.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Well, usually we would be doing this in front of you, in front of a table, interacting with everyone, but it's not that way right now. So we'll take virtual over nothing any day of the week. So we're glad to be in front of you. I'm privileged to be with my colleagues, James and Marnie, representing Dow and J-Lore, two other pioneers and key wineries in the region. So if any of you have been to Paso Robles, it's a very, very unique region. It's a beautiful region. If you have been there, then you understand. If you haven't, then I would definitely recommend, when things open up a little bit, to try to take a visit out there. It is just an amazing place. So Paso Robles, we're going to go over a little bit of the geography, the climate, and what it's all about, and then we're going to into each of our wines down the road. So Paso Robles. So Paso Robles geographically is located in the central part of California. If you were to fly into LA, we're a 3.5-hour car ride north. If you fly into San Francisco, we're about a 3.5-hour car ride south. So we're right centrally in the middle of the state, which is a great spot, and beautiful growing region. As you drive in, you'll see all these beautiful, lush, rolling hills into the mountain ranges to the east and to the west. Also unique with us, we are only 13 miles to the ocean. So upon your visit to Paso, you take a tour to one of the wineries, have some wine, cheese plate, and then in the afternoon, you can go see the sea lions at the beach. So that's very unique to Paso Robles. We have this debate on how to say it. Is it Robles or Robles? So you'll probably hear me saying it both ways throughout this presentation. So Paso Robles literally translates to passageway of the oaks because of not only will you see these rolling hills, you'll see an abundance of oak trees. So it's an amazing place, amazing climate, and just it's, as you'll see, it's very unique to other regions. So in contrast to where Paso is located, say Napa Valley is about 50 miles inland from the ocean. So that giving us that closeness, proximity to the ocean really influences all of our vineyards. And it's a warm climate. As Martin's going to get into a little bit later on, you're going to hear the word diurnal swing. A diurnal swing is the gap of temperature. It's very abundant in Paso Robles, much more than any other region. It could be a 50-degree swing in one day. So with that, we'll get to the next slide. So this gives you some stats on the region. So basically, Paso Robles was founded around the same time as the other regions in California, but we've always kind of been the underdog. Paso was, back in the 80s when it was established, we were one region, or one AVA. An AVA stands for an American Viticultural Area. Basically, any vineyard area that is deemed to have great growing soils and topography and superior grapes is considered an AVA. We only had one at the time, even though we were 600,000 acres in land versus Napa's, say 400,000, and Sonoma is about 600,000 as well. But they had 11, 12, a dozen AVAs. We only had one. So families like Dolores and the Hopes that I work for petitioned to establish these extra AVAs throughout the region because of their diversity. So with that, we now have 11 AVAs that we source from all throughout the region of Paso Robles. So each area roughly has about 40,000 acres under vine. So to get in perspective, when you go to Paso, you see a lot more vineyard than winery, whereas the other regions you'll see more winery, vineyard. We're at an elevation anywhere between 700 to 2,400 feet above sea level with the mountain ranges. We're known for, back in the day, there was the glaciers that all were covering the mountainsides. So what's unique to us as well, our soils have new soils and older soils. As those glaciers eroded, they tore back the sediment. So we have all that seabed in the mountain range, which gives all that minerality to the wines. So as you can see, Paso is a very, very unique region. We're not one-dimensional, we're multi-dimensional. And as we're going to discuss later on in the slides, you'll see how every vineyard helps to add to the color, the aroma, and the flavor profile of all of our wines. So with that, hope you guys enjoy the presentation. Welcome again. We love having you guys, and hopefully you learn a little bit more about Paso Robles and then get to go out and visit one day.
All right, yes, I'm gonna take the next slide. Hi, everyone, thanks for being here. So just to add on to what Shane mentioned, a little bit, the most important things about the region of Paso Robles, which is also called the Central Coast. So we are in the Central Coast region of California. Our climate, our soils, our varietals, and our growing season are what makes Paso, as we call it, Paso, so important of a region in California. As Shane mentioned, we've got these really, really warm days where the temperatures can get up to about 105 degrees, and then the nights can get down to 40 or 50 if they're lucky. What this does actually for the grapes, that nice heat helps to ripen the grapes, but you can get a burn if it gets too hot. So that nice cool air that comes in at night allows the grapes to rest. So they don't burn. So they rest, they grow during the beautiful sunlight, and then they rest in the evenings. It's not mentioning here, but we do have quite a bit of rainfall, which of course is good for any plant. They need water. Our soils are very distinctive. We have the most calcareous and siliceous soils in California. So that's like rocky and clay, and as Shane mentioned, shells from the seabeds and things like that. And believe it or not, those are really, really good for grape growing. They drain the water, they collect the water and drain it. So when there is no rain, that water is still there for the grapes to access, which is great. There are over 60 varietals grown in the region. The region was known for what they call the Rhone varietals from the Rhone region of France. So those were Zinfandel, Syrah, Mourvedre, very hardy grapes that could withstand the heat. But as winemaking developed, all kinds of winemakers have come in and brought all of their grapes in. So now you'll see almost every kind of grape grown in Paso. As I said, we do have a lot of rainfall, but then a lot of heat and cooling. We've got this absolutely perfect, nice, lengthy growing season that gives the grapes everything they need to ripen properly to keep that acidity high. And as we get into each of our wines, we'll talk a little bit about more what those terms mean, acidity and sugars and things like that. So James, you take the next slide and keep talking about Paso.
Okay, so on the next slide here, we get a little bit closer into the AVA of Paso Robles. And what we're showing here on the slide is the different sub-AVAs. So we have some of the higher range AVAs like the Adelaida, the Paso Robles, Estrella districts, or more in the mountain rolling hills range. And then we're going to get into the valley, or the soft valley as we call it, the Templeton Gap. And we'll get into the El Pomar, the Templeton Gap district as well, and then a Creston Gap. What this does, or really what it's showcasing, is the warmer areas of Paso Robles, ideal for your Bordeaux varietals. And then the cooler areas, or more coastal influenced areas, are a little bit more ideal for some of the softer varietals like Merlot that I'll be tasting with you later on, and then cooler climate Sauvignon Blancs and Chardonnays and so forth. It's really important to understand the coastal influence in this region, because when you have that change and that flux in temperature, it is just the perfect setting for grapes. When you can have those warm days and let the grapes ripen, the sugar aspects of the Brix level is able to elevate. And when we talk about sugars and Brix, that's where the flavor of the wine comes from. And it's everything a winemaker needs and a tool for them to craft an incredibly elegant wine. Skins on the grapes are thicker, deeper in color. A lot more phenolics coming out of the skin. So color, sugars, it's like the tool for a winemaker to develop their wines. And in this district and in these sub-AVAs, we have different patches that are ideal for different varietals. And that is so unique to Paso. The temperatures and the rainfall in the winter months, and then we really don't get any rainfall or moisture throughout the growing season. It's absolutely perfect area for crafting incredible wines. So as we move through the wines, I hope you enjoy the first half of it. I hope you enjoy the wines, and I'll be back in a little bit after we go into the Dow Sauvignon Blanc.
All right, everyone. So I hope that you have, I believe you have the sheet on each of the wines, right, Karen? Did they each get emailed the sheet? So you're looking at the sheet about the Dow Family Estate Sauvignon Blanc, but I'm going to give you a little bit of history of Dow first. So here you're looking at George and Daniel Dow. So Dow is their last name. These are brothers. They are originally from Lebanon. And when we talk about, I mean, every wine, every winery has a story. But Dow, we actually just recently changed our names from Dow Vineyards to Dow Family Estates. When you talk about Dow, it's all about family. This winery was created in honor of their family, and they have quite an interesting family story. I'll be brief. The brothers grew up quite comfortably in Beirut, Lebanon. Unfortunately, in the war in the 70s, their house was hit by an errant missile. Both brothers were injured and were in the hospital for quite a long time. Their mother was actually a French national and said, let's get out of here, took the family to France. So they grew up in the Provence region of France and also in Paris. George is the older brother. He decided to come over to the US and be educated as an engineer at UC San Diego. Daniel, his brother, followed soon after. They actually created, and this is the 80s/90s, they created one of the first companies, tech companies, that allowed hospitals to interact with each other. It was quite successful. They sold it, and that was the time when Daniel decided that his the lifelong love of wine that he had learned from his father growing up in France, he wanted to make wine. He wanted to make world-class Bordeaux wines. That was what he was raised on. Bordeaux wines were his father's favorite. He wanted to make world-class Bordeaux wines wherever he found the best soils, the best climate, the best environment for these wines. So they looked everywhere. The reason they didn't go back to France, if you know anything about French winemaking, these are almost all the vineyards in France are family owned, and they pass generation to generation. It's very hard to just walk in and start your own vineyard. So they looked in Spain, they looked in all around the world, Chile, Mexico, everywhere you could possibly grow grapes, Australia, and they came to California and found Hoffman Mountain Ranch. It was a defunct winery in Paso, and they stood at the top of the mountain, which is at 2,200 feet elevation. It's the highest point in Paso, actually, and saw that the soils were almost identical to Bordeaux with the clay and the limestone. The climate was perfect. Although we said before that Paso can get up to 105 degrees, it rarely gets above about 97 degrees on Dow Mountain, so which was better because Daniel wanted to grow Bordeaux variety grapes. They do need a little bit of a cooler climate. So we had the elevation, he had the soils. We are 16 miles from the ocean. So as James mentioned, that Templeton Gap, that is the gap between the mountains where those winds come in and fogs in the morning. If you ever go there and you're up in the morning, there you go, perfect. So that's Dow. We're in the Adelaida AVA, which is in the northwest corner up there, very close to the ocean. We get these beautiful winds that come in, cool off the grapes. The fog rolls in, protects the grapes in the early morning light, blows off, they get to grow, and you know, it's just a perfect environment for Bordeaux varietals to grow. So on the next slide, you'll see a picture actually of some of the vineyards at Dow. It's unbelievably beautiful. That beautiful elevation as well, all of the sunlight. The next slide is a picture of the winery, actually, if you'd like to come and visit. That is the back of our tasting room at Sunset. Paso is so gorgeous. I had not been there before. I've been all around the world as far as wine is concerned. I had not been to Paso Robles, and it's just incredible. It almost looks fake. That's how beautiful it is. So we'd love for everyone to come out. You can do that. And let's get into the wine. So you guys all have your Dow Sauvignon Blanc, right? You have the 2018 Sauvignon Blanc. This is the first Sauvignon Blanc that Dow has released out into what we call the wholesale trade. They have an estate Sauvignon Blanc that's only available at the winery. 2018 was the first vintage to be released. So nice and easy for you. You got a screw cap. It's easy. So I'll go a little bit, because I'm the first wine, into the basics of wine tasting. So first is sight, right? So you look at it. You're looking at the color of it. You're seeing, and please feel free to put in the Q&A, you know, anything that you see or smell or taste, because there's never a wrong answer, and everyone's going to taste and smell something different. So when you look at the color, it's really telling you mostly about what the varietal is. So when something like a Sauvignon Blanc, it's going to be clear, it's going to be a lemony yellow, a very pale yellow, whereas a Chardonnay might be a little bit of a darker yellow. The color will also tell you about the age of a wine. If you look around the edges of the glass and you see those lines coming down, that's an indicator of the alcohol of the wine. So you can do all kinds of things. You can learn things about a wine just from looking at it. So then you want to smell the wine. Now the reason that we swirl a little bit like this, and it's just kind of a gentle motion with the bottom of the glass, is to bring up what we call the esters. Those are the aroma molecules. And you'll notice if you smell it when it's still, you don't get much out of it. And you really have to put your nose in there. When you swirl it, all those beautiful flavors come out. So for Sauvignon Blanc in general, but for this Dow 2018 Sauvignon Blanc, just throw some words out there on the Q&A. I know what we say on the sheet, you know, pineapple and grapefruit and lychee, and you're going to get some lemon, but there's no wrong.
Lychee and the lemon.
No, it's correct. So then you can taste it. So cheers. Let's all try. So nice and light and refreshing. And if you notice, it makes your mouth water a little bit. So that's that nice natural acidity in Sauvignon Blanc. I didn't talk about the winemaking actually. So this Sauvignon Blanc is actually harvested at night and fermented cold without going into the entire fermentation process. When you do a cold fermentation, it's a lot slower than a regular temperature or a warmer fermentation, which just allows all those, it's mostly for aroma. All those aromas that's what the cold fermentation does it. So, and no oak, this wine does not see any oak barrels. This is fermented in steel once again, to preserve those delicate flavors and aromas. So pear, yes, I'm getting pear. Anyone else? James, what are you getting? Karen, anybody?
Definitely got the melon and the lemon on the nose for sure. A little bit of stone fruit in the background.
Yeah. Some comments from the audience. So someone noted that it smells amazing, and someone else noted that they had it with goat cheese, dried apricots, and preserves, and just really brought out the flavor of the fruit, they thought.
I love. It looks like Cindy said summery. That's great. That's exactly what Sauvignon Blanc brings to my thoughts. Is nice warm weather, a nice cool glass of Sauvignon Blanc, crisp and clean and refreshing.
Yes, so it's, Jeff just said apples. Yes, green apple, Granny Smith apples, green apples, definitely one of the flavors here. Goat cheese is one of my favorite things. I always pair goat cheese with Sauvignon Blanc. So speaking of food pairings for our wines, any kind of mild cheese is great with a Sauvignon Blanc. It's great as an aperitif wine, so it's great as just a porch sipper, a summer wine, as we said. But mild cheeses, some people even pair it with salads, depending on your dressing. Salads are tough for wine. Fish, chicken, seafood, anything like that, that's kind of a summer type dish is perfect for Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc happens to be my personal favorite. Grape, if you didn't know, it is a Bordeaux variety. It did originate in France, but lots of it is grown in California. And because the Dow brothers are huge Bordeaux aficionados, they decided to produce Sauvignon Blanc.
Arnie, someone asked what the temperature should be to serve the white wine. So I usually say, the rule of thumb usually is you take white wine out of the refrigerator 20 to 30 minutes before you drink it, and usually put red wine into the refrigerator 20 minutes before you drink it to kind of bring it to cellar temperature, which is, what would you say, 60 some degree, 65, something like that?
Maybe. I mean, 65. I like my white wines very, very cold. It depends on your, what you're chilling it in. I don't love when restaurants leave it in a bucket of ice at the table, because especially as you have less wine in the bottle, it gets too cold and then you can't get all those wonderful flavors. So it depends. If your fridge is really cold, mine is not very cold, so I took it out. It was perfect temperature. You'll notice if a wine is too cold, you won't get much from it. So let it warm up for a few minutes, put it in your hands like this, let it warm up in your glass. That's usually a good way to do it. I also do agree with Shane. When they say red wine should be, enjoyed at room temperature is way too warm for wine. That's not room temperature for red wines. So I do throw mine in the fridge So
we mean cellar temperature for red wines.
Which usually means like European wine cellar, like France or Italy.
Correct.
Morning. We had a question from Marisol. She wants to know if it could be used for white sangria.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. Great base for white sangria. Perfect. Yep. Because you've already got those citrus flavors in there. Throw your citrus in. I don't know if you're doing like a true sangria and adding brandy and sugar and all of that stuff, but yeah, it's a perfect base for sangria. Absolutely. And I'll take more questions at the end, but I'm going to turn it over to James.
All right.
Talk about his Merlot.
Absolutely. Okay, so everybody has the Merlot sheet. It's the technical sheet or the winemaker's notes. I'm going to give you a little bit of brief history on J. Lohr, who we are, where we are. We already know where we are. Jerry Lohr stands for Jerry Lohr. The J in J. Lohr is for Jerry Lohr. He's the founder and CFO. We are a family-owned winery. We're on our second generation. Jerry is a farmer originally from South Dakota. He went to South Dakota State. And then to finish his schooling, he went to Stanford to get his master's in civil engineering. He moved on to work for NASA at the Ames Research Center until about the late 60s, and he got into the private sector and created Lohr Homes in the San Jose Central Coast area of California. Right around 72, he decided to get into the vineyard side and get back to his farming roots. And that's when he decided that he would like to plant 280 acres in Monterey in 73, 74. Very successful with our Chardonnay program. And then he wanted to move our red wines into a warmer climate or more suited climate for Bordeaux varietals. And we moved down into Paso in the early 80s. I started with the winery 19 years ago. I was hired by Jerry Lohr. I now have the pleasure of working with the children. If you want to switch on to the next slide, we have a quick picture of the family. So we have oldest son, Steve Lohr, who is now our CEO. Daughter Cynthia is our brand ambassador and VP of marketing for J. Lohr Vineyards and Wines. And then youngest, Lawrence Lohr, he works on the vineyard side, more of his father's shadow as far as the back of the house or vineyard side of the house for J. Lohr. We are a little over 40 years of family-owned viticulture and winemaking. We have 3 sites, Monterey, our original plantings, Paso Robles, and Napa Valley. We have a small vineyard. We are 100% certified sustainable farming. We have a little over 6,000 acres. We have a 4,000 acre vine count. So that's vines planted in our vineyards and those AVAs. Most of our plantings are in the Paso Robles region, about 2,700 acres planted there. We are very involved in the industry. Steve Lohr, actually, as Shane said earlier, helped develop the sub-AVAs in Paso Robles, the naming rights, the geography, all the filings with the federal government to get those AVAs up and running. So we're very proud of what we've done and accomplished. I'm very proud to work for a family-owned winery and get to work with a second-generation family-owned winery. So with that, we can move on to tasting the J. Lohr Los Osos Merlot. So earlier, we went, if we go back one slide and we'll just quickly jump into the plantings of our Merlot in the El Pomar district in Paso Robles. It's a cooler area in Paso. It's in the Templeton Gap, so it's in that low-lying valley. The cool air from the Pacific comes in through the Templeton Gap. It's actually pushed down from the Salinas Valley in the Monterey Peninsula. And Jerry really thought that this cooler area, which is about 5 to 8 degrees cooler than, say, the Estrella area where we plant some of our Cabernet, or a majority of our Cabernet, really ideal for Merlot and Malbec. And that's what we have planted in the El Pomar district for the Los Osos Merlot. If everybody's ready, we'll get our glass. So this is the estate produced and bottled Los Osos Merlot. On the nose, I always love Merlot because it's the blue fruits that really shine. We get more of that plum, blueberry, a little bit of cassis. And then on the background, and we barrel ferment 100% oak barrels, American oak typically 60% second fill barrels are used once already, and then the rest will be new percentage barrels. On the nose and those blue fruits, after that you get a little bit of the wine or the barrel influence, and then the winemaking technique. You get a little bit of that kind of nutty, kind of brown baking spice on there. The winemaker throws out hibiscus flower on the aroma. I don't know how many people are running up to hibiscus flowers and have that in their memory bank, but it's an interesting kind of earthy tone to it as well. So really great, bright fruit on the Merlot, a little bit softer tannins. And if we're not, and I use the word tannins, it's the dryness of a wine. The best way I've always explained tannins is when we were younger and we had table grapes that used to have seeds. We would bite into the grape, and right where we made contact in that seed area, you get that dryness on your teeth and on your gums. That's tannins. They're in the skins and in the seeds of the grape. In red wine, we are pressing the juice and leaving it in contact with skins and seeds to elevate the tannin levels and colors. But Merlots tend to be softer in the tannin element, really drinkable and soft on the palate. That's why we like the Merlot so much. And then also the Malbec. It brings color and essence to the wine, but it doesn't elevate the tannin structure and get the wine unbalanced. And at J-Lore, we always talk about a balanced wine. We want the fruit to be on the front part of the palate. We want the structure to be in the mid palate, the barrel influence. And then we want the tannins to be on the back of the palate where they're supposed to be, not in front of any other element of the wine. So I hope you guys enjoy the Merlot. And again, let me check real quick and see if there's any comments, questions that we
I
can
love
talk
that
about real quick.
nutty, the nuttiness behind the fruit is fantastic. I love that.
All right.
Looks like it's a hit, James.
All right, I'll pass it off to Shane, and we'll move into our next wine.
You got it. So Hope Family Wines. Hope Family Wines started. Geez, this is a story that takes back to Texas during the Great Depression. Austin Hope's grandfather, W.A., decided to start a new life for his family, so moved to California around in the 1940s. He worked for a distributor delivering beer and spirits to local stores. And within a few years, W.A. purchased the distributor and became the owner of that distributor. Austin's father, Chuck Hope, ended up working for the grandfather as a truck driver as well, delivering Coors. They're all throughout Falstaff and throughout the interior coastal region. So when W.A. passed away, Chuck Hope didn't really have the capital to take over the distributor that they've amassed. All the shareholders took over. So Chuck turned to his friend and said, "What do I do now?" And his friend said, "Why don't you move to Paso Robles and plant grapes and apples? Can't really mess it up. It's a beautiful climate, beautiful region." So that's what he did. At that time, Austin was around 5 years old, and they moved there, and they were just grape growers. All we did was grow grapes and produce, wine pretty much for wineries all throughout the region. But because the grapes were so lush and the wine was so delicious, we raised awareness all throughout California. So much that a gentleman by the name of Chuck Wagner, who was starting a winery called Caymus at the time, decided to take a drive down in his pickup truck, met Chuck Hope, and said, "Listen, I want to start buying your grapes for my Liberty School label." Back then, Chuck Hope made Liberty School to pay homage to his father, Charlie Wagner, because at that time they were making Caymus. It was more of a medium-priced wine. Now it's a high-end wine. But he always wanted the Liberty School to be the working man, the working class Cabernet. But he didn't want to pay the Napa fruit prices. So he was buying all this fruit from Chuck Hope. And this is around the mid-'80s, roughly. Same time as the Loors, were cultivating their properties as well. So with that, we became partners, and we were just selling Chuck Wagner grapes. Fast forward around a decade into the early 90s, Chuck Wagner and Chuck Hope were pheasant hunting in Mexico. And over that trip, Chuck turned to Chuck and said, "Listen, why don't we partner up with Liberty School and become a partnership? I know you want to start your own winery and make your own labels and make your own wine. This would be a good intro into that." So with that capital and with that ability from Chuck Wagner, Chuck Hope started Triana Winery. So Triana Winery was born. Under that umbrella, we make Liberty School. Still to this day, partnership with the Wagners. We make our Triana labels, Chardonnay, a Cabernet, a red blend, even a Blanc. Similar to kind of what Marnie was saying with her brothers. Austin lives in the Rhone Valley, fell in love with the Rhone grape varietals. As a matter of fact, on our about 30 to 40 acre property, estate property, we only grow Rhone varietals, Viognier, Marsanne, Roussanne, Grenache. That goes into our very small batch bottlings of those wines. Everything else, we divvy out around the AVAs. The beauty of being able to buy, someone said once, do you own all your property? And we said, we don't. We source all through those 11 AVAs. 5 out of the 11 are the ones that Austin really feels he hones in on. but the, being able to source really gives us the ability to pick fruit from all kinds of great properties. Like James was saying, Estrella, Preston, Adelaida. So Austin came into the winery. We needed a winemaker. So who does he ask? We had a winemaker for a part-time. Chris Howe was our winemaker. Then that Chris got another, started making his own wines and kind of didn't work out. So Austin turned to his best friend, JC. JC was Austin's high school buddy, best friend. JC actually was an engineer by trade who actually built Triana Winery. So Austin turns to JC and says, I want you to help be my winemaker. And at that time, JC actually turned him down. He's like, I'm not being a winemaker. I like my job as an engineer. So Austin, after much perseverance, talked JC into being our winemaker. And to this day, over 25 years in the making, JC is our winemaker. And this is, again, a story of a family. We're not owned by any corporation. We're a family-owned winery. So to this day, we have many different labels: Liberty School, Triana, our Austin Hope label. So it's been a great ride with these guys, and they've made experimented throughout the years, and to this day, Liberty School Cabernet, which we're going to try right now, has been a wine that's been in on the shelves and in restaurants for almost 30 years. So hopefully you guys have the Liberty School Cabernet. So Liberty School. So that's a picture of our winery and barrel room. We do everything on site. So Liberty School label. So Liberty School Cab comes from 4 AVAs. Like I said, Austin really likes 5 of the AVAs that he feels are give a lot of texture to the wines. This wine comes mostly from the Estrella district. It's one of the larger districts in Paso. But in that large territory, it's a small area that makes really pristine Cabernet grapes. So this wine, which is really neat about this wine as well, it comes from 50 family growers. So 50 families grow these grapes, and then we take those grapes, we barrel ferment them individual lots, then we blend them, and then through that we age another 16 months in a combination of American and French oak. 10% of that is new. So if we give a good swirl to this wine, color. This is a Bordeaux style wine. This is actually a blend. I'm going to go to my little notes here, but this wine is 90% Cabernet, 5% Syrah, 3% Merlot, and 2% Petit Syrah. So again, Austin, all of our wines are somewhat blends. I mean, I've gotten into discussions with people during tastings saying, oh, it says Cabernet, it must be 100% Cabernet. None of our wines are 100% anything. Everything is a blend. Everything is kind of a medley. He lets JC kind of be a chef in making these wines. So this is our everyday Liberty School Cab. You can get right off the bat, you see the color. It's a very dark, deep, rich, brick red.
Shane, if I can add to that just for a second in case people don't know, for a wine to have the name Cabernet on the label, it must be 75% Cabernet.
Right.
Correct?
Yep.
You can do whatever you want with the other 25%. As long as your wine is 75% Cabernet, you can put Cabernet on the label. That's why Shane was talking about blends. Most Cabernets you see, some will be 100%, but a lot will have some other grapes blended in for different flavors, textures, aromas, whatever. That's the winemaker art.
100%. I mean, again, most 99 probably percent of the wines you're going to drink out in the market are not 100%. I mean, you have a few that are, but majority of winemakers, they're like chefs. I mean, you go to a steakhouse, is it 100% filet mignon? No, it's, seasoned in salt and pepper and, cooked in butter. It's the same thing. So, we want to make wines that are enjoyable. We want you to be, I'm already getting some notes in here. People are like, oh, brown sugar on the finish. Love it. Oh, I really like this. This wine, again, going back to the Wagner days, is meant to be lush and delicious all day long. The reason why this wine has stood the test of time is because it's always over-delivered for the value. So I'm going to take a sip now. I haven't tried it yet.
Look, they're all eating. You guys are so fantastic. Like, they have food and everything paired already.
Yeah, Shane.
I feel like a slacker.
Shane, Helene notes that they opened it earlier, let it breathe, and are enjoying it with roasted rosemary lamb and leeks with potatoes.
What's your address?
She says they love it. They've had
Excellent.
it before, but they love it.
I mean, in all reality, I mean, again, all of our wines, J-Lore, Dow, the whole region, I mean, Paso really, I mean, it's been around as long as the other regions, but it always got a little overshadowed by the Napas and the Sonomas. Paso really, from entry to high end, is the best bang buck you're going to find in California. Really, I mean, when I go to Paso, I visit J-Lore, I visit Dow. You know, it's fun to go visit other wineries because they're amazing, and what they're doing, I mean, they're keeping their roots, but they're also preserving, you know, and they're also, you know, making these wines in a modern way that people can enjoy them. Paso's unique. I mean, again, I remember I was just there, you know, for our national meeting, and I think a Marriott was trying to build a hotel. It's taken them almost 6 years to try to get a hotel built in downtown Paso. James can attest. I mean, you can. I mean, it's rancheros. It's cowboy boots, cowboy hats. You know, it's a different vibe than anywhere else in California.
But I think what you said also, Shane, is important to note. The value that you can get out of Paso Robles wines, the quality is the same or better than Napa and Sonoma. But what it is that the acreage is not as expensive, so they can make fantastic wines at a lower price. So, you know, you don't have to go buy a $300 bottle of Napa. You can buy a much more nicely priced bottle from Paso and have exactly the same experience.
I mean, it's, you know, yeah, and that's what people are really, you know, it's anymore with our new labels, what Austin's doing, you know, everything is saying Paso Robles or Paso Robles, sorry, in big letters, because now people are like, oh, I want that Paso Robles wine. They think it's, you know, a style of wine because, again, you know, what we mentioned, the diurnal swing. You go out to Paso, they beat that word to death. You fly back on the airplane, you're like diurnal.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it literally, I mean, we live in New Jersey. You know, in the summer, it's 90 degrees in the day, and it's maybe 85 at night. Here, it's 105 in the day, and it's 50 at night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really drastic. You know, so like Maureen was saying, these wines go into a refrigerated state and then get really ripe again. So we're getting a couple questions come in. Someone said, how long would you let the wine rest? It's funny, me and James were just talking about this. And does it matter? I mean, look, I love to open my wine, you know, or I'll go out with these samples, you know, we'll go hit the road, work with sales reps and show these wines. The next day, they're better. Even the entry-level Liberty School, all the way up to my $65 Austin Hope. These wines all, I mean, I'm sure, and I, you know, even my, you know, my counterparts wines as well, you know, I've had all those wines and let them sit for a couple of days. They will open up over time because of the viscosity of these wines and the texture and somewhat the sugar levels, you know, they will open up over a couple of days. So
not so much the whites, just the reds.
I'm sorry?
Yes,
not so much the whites, just the reds.
Oh. Well, yeah.
That was actually known for their Cabernets and their reds. We have a lovely white, so I decided to be the white wine person for tonight.
There was a question
I agree with that.
as well for some of the pairings. I know. I think I might have skipped over my pairings for the Merlot, so I'll touch on that real quick. Any grilled red meats will go with the Merlot. Even grilled pork, even roasted chicken. And even a red sauce, a simple spaghetti and meatballs with the Merlot will work really well. What I always love to do with Merlot is I love pizza with Merlot. It's one of my favorite things to pair the wine with. So that's just for the Merlot, and we can touch on the Cabernet and the Sauvignon Blanc as well.
Shane, we had a question from Jeff. He said it's a pretty substantial bottle and much heavier than the others. Is there any significance to that? And does it prevent light from coming in?
Oh, I mean the actual glass. Yeah, Austin's really particular. I've been selling wine, you know, many different distributors. I worked for an Italian wine importer, always had corked wines. Unfortunately, the European wines, I have rarely had a bad bottle. So we even down to our corks, Austin, pays extra money to get good corks. The glass, that's a great question. I think it's more tradition. Again, this is a wine it's been in the making almost 30 years. And, I think it's just the style of what they're doing. We do, we do spend more money with our glass, but the darker color, I'm not sure. I'll have to hit Austin back and get back to you on that. But, yeah, I know that with white wines, when you get to, Marnie's wines in a clear bottle, glass does affect wine, especially on like a retail shelf. So if you have a wine that's sitting on the shelf, especially white wine, in that clear bottle, it can turn. Again, don't forget, white wine gets darker as it ages, and red wine gets lighter as it ages. So if you get an older bottle of wine, and it's got like that rusty color, it means it's obviously an older wine. White wine gets darker. It's the other way around as it gets older. So, and pairing with this wine, look, if you go on our YouTube, Austin Hope, he's, now that we can't do much, he's become an in-house chef. So he's got a lot of YouTube posts about cooking tenderloin and all kinds of, I don't know what he was making, was it quail or something, but anything on the grill. Big time grilling
I think
wines.
we can all say that we can all say that yeah.
Marnie broke up.
Daniel Dow's daughter, and he actually has 4 children. All 3 of them are now in the business with him. Catherine is our social media manager. So if you look up Dow on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Catherine has done a crazy job with social media particularly in this climate. They do Instagram Live. They pair with DJs and celebrities and sports stars and tastings and lessons and chefs. And it's just crazy how everyone's sort of learning to be a virtual, the wine world is so in person and so tactile. And, Shane and James and I, our jobs are to be out with people all day, every day, tasting wines, bringing the wines to people. And we can't do that now. And, this is fantastic. This kind of, to be able to just talk to you and have you have the wines and experience it like this. It's great. That's my phone. Sorry. But, we've all had to sort of pivot, like I said, to social media. So check all of our websites and look us all up on all the social media. I'm sure we're all there, right, James? I'm sure J. Laura is there as well.
Absolutely. Yep. We have an Instagram Live going on right now with the family.
Someone asked how we come up with label designs.
Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
No, someone says, how do you come up with label designs? Someone asked that question. Well, Marnie, your speaker.
Who is that for? For you or who's that for?
All of us, I guess. So we can start.
All of us? Good question. I'm not involved in that process.
I can speak on that for sure.
Okay.
So for us, we use a marketing firm to analyze color scheme, texture scheme, just the overall graphics and size of the label. And then we have the executive board, which is the Lore family and some retired industry folks. And we kind of look at labels and mock-ups to the point, what is pleasing to the customer, but what also grabs your eye? What pops on the shelf? But everything's about the name. If you look at every label that's out there, the largest font is going to be the name of the winery or the family-owned winery, however it lands. And then it's always, then we steer to where the region is or where's the wine produced from. And then obviously the back of the label is our quickest snapshot of how we can interest you in buying the wine. So there'll be blurbs about the style, the history, the flavor components, and so on. But color and texture and the feel and look and the pop of the label is how we develop ours. And I'm sure it's very similar with Dow and Austin Hope and Liberty School.
That's a really good description. There's a lot that goes into marketing wine. There's a whole psychology behind it. They say that 70% of the wine buyers are women. So that's why you'll see a lot of labels with flowers and animals and mommy juice and all these things aimed at women, because we tend to be the ones shopping for the wine, which is interesting. For Dow, the one thing I will say is that they like everything to be consistent. We have a very consistent marketing message at Dow. It's always about the family. So as James said, the name is always the most prominent. I will say something about, so you'll see this bell. You'll see the bell on the Sauvignon Blanc, and you'll see the bell on my shirt and any other merchandising that we have. Briefly, we have a bell tower right at the tasting room. The Dow brothers, when they were living in San Diego right around when they started the winery actually, found this cracked bell, and it had this wonderful story that it came from a monastery in Spain. There were 3 bells called the Three Sisters, and after the monastery crumbled, 1 bell stayed in Spain, 1 went to Portugal, and 1 found its way to America, and they loved that, so they bought the bell, took it back, and the bell is actually cast in 1740, so we've got a wine named 1740, and their winery cat is named Bell. So the bell is our symbol and a big part of our story. So that, again, that goes to the labeling and the marketing as well.
I know for our labels, it's all Austin. Other than Liberty School, which was started by Chuck Wagner, and we really don't change it very much. Little side story. So this label, the little bell tower, supposedly Charlie Wagner went to a schoolhouse that resembled that, and that's kind of where the label came from. So we kept it ever since. I'm sure, Chuck, wants us to do that. I mean, it's had some modernization to the label, but it's really been the same ever since. Every other label, Austin's wife Celeste is a designer and a photographer. Like Marnie said, you go to our Instagram, Facebook, you'll see all kinds of videos and pictures. So those labels are all Austin's. Our Troublemaker, Austin of Cab, and Triana labels all came from him. So.
And somebody asked, how do we get these wines in our local, Marisol asked, how do we get these wines in our local wine store? Just ask for them, bring a picture of the bottle. That's what people do most of the time. They can have them for you next day. We are all distributed by the major distributors in New Jersey, and they are widely available. So if your store doesn't have it, your closest store, it could be your tiny little corner store, they can order it. It's available. Just ask.
Absolutely.
Alice, we're going to launch 2 polls to the audience. One is related to how long we keep a bottle open. So I'm going to send that out to everybody and see how that comes in.
Do you watch the vote live, Karen?
I am. So they're coming in now. 60% are saying 3 days, 30% 1 day, and 8% are saying 2 hours.
Do you want us to weigh in?
Yeah, please. It's changing, but it's only a little bit. So that's the average.
Yeah.
So 60% say 3 days, keep a bottle open. About 30% agree 1 day, and 10% are around 2 hours. So what do you think?
Okay, I can say the 2 hours. Incorrect. Wine will not go bad in 2 hours.
No.
So
I agree with everybody. I go with the 3 days, especially if you just cork it up nice and tight. If you don't have to have one of those vacuum systems. If you do, that's great. Just cork it up. If it's white, throw it in the fridge. Even if it's red, throw it in the fridge, as long as you bring it back to temperature before, drinking it. Your 3rd day should be fine. I wouldn't go much past that.
I sent another poll to everyone. Does the glass I drink or serve the wine in matter? Majority are saying yes.
it depends how much you want to get in there.
Majority is they agree, yes.
We'll let more come in before we comment.
We're more than 90% agree.
Okay. Shane, you want to go? Shane, you take it.
Who's it, me?
Yeah. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, look, again, we've all talked about this. I mean, listen, yes. I mean, look, I've had, hand blown, one guy made, the glass. I mean, look, the thinner the rim, obviously the rule of thumb, if it's a really thin rim, a Riedel, a Spiegelau glass, something German crystal, it's going to give you a better mouthfeel on the wine. Yes. And that's definitely true. And I've seen it in practice. I mean, I had a wine out of a solo cup, and then I had it out of this, $100 glass. Yes, the wine is much more elegant, and you get the aromatics and the perfume and the silkiness on your tongue. But that being said, I'll grab whatever I can out of the cabinet.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I used to sell Italian wine. There was an Italian restaurant near me in Red Bank, and he sold, served wine out of a little kind of like an orange juice glass.
Yeah.
And that's old school Italian. They wouldn't even serve it in a wine glass. They use like a little, a glass. So it's really, it's as long as you're able to put it in something and enjoy it, that's all that matters.
I agree. And you can look it up on YouTube. There are entire classes on the shape of the glass and what it does for the nose, especially, and the way the wine hits your tongue as you tilt it. But if you're not a professional wine taster, just put it in a glass and drink it. It's all good.
The company's more important than the glass.
Absolutely.
Marnie, we have a question about screw top versus for your wine. What do you think?
Oh,
why is that?
So I'm the only screw top here, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Yes. Okay. And I'm sure everyone knows that there are reds in screw top as well. It's not just a white wine thing. We actually our new vintage of Chardonnay, we just went over to screw top. So very long story, very short. Corks can be diseased. Corks come from trees, and they do get diseases. So when you hear that a wine is corked, that generally means that the cork had a disease. Unbeknownst to the winemaker, it was put in the wine, and it ruined the wine. So there's a school of thought saying that you can avoid that by not using corks. Also, screw tops, cork is porous, so some air does come in. That's good and bad depending on the wine. Screw tops do make a very tight seal, so America especially is getting very used to screw tops. They're good for the wine. You will never have a corked wine. Don't worry if you find an expensive wine with a screw top. It's kind of the new thing. What do you guys think?
Absolutely, yeah. Cork is a natural product, so it has flaws naturally. The wine industry does a tremendous job of trying to get the highest quality corks. We actually cork a red wine. It's called Valdegui. It's a very light style red wine. We screw top a red. Yep. Most of our Sauvignon Blanc that we produce is screw cap. The way I look at it is, if the wine is to be consumed young, it's best to put it into a screw cap. It stays fresh. It stays exactly the way the winery and the winemaker wants the wine to be. There's no influences of cork. In our industry nowadays, with the advancements of the screw cap or Stelvin closures, it actually has decreased the demand on cork. So the quality of cork has elevated. So we don't have as many issues of corked wine anymore. Where, say, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, it was running around 7 to 10% corkage, and that is just not what we want.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Not good.
But typically you see white wines or maybe more New Zealand, Australian wines will be in screw cap. Typically California whites will be. Again, they're going to be Sauvignon Blancs, Rieslings, Chardonnays that maybe are unoaked, and they're to be consumed at a younger aging. So
it also makes the wine a little bit more affordable. Cork is fairly expensive. Screw tops are not. So if you want to keep the price of your wine low and accessible to people, a screw top is another great option. It does not mean that the quality of the wine is any different. It's just another option.
Yeah, I mean, we've been asked all the time. We still use cork And we actually have our white wine our white wine, and we have a rosé, and we actually bottle that at a different bottling facility because we don't want to invest. It's a lot of money to invest in a Stelvin enclosure bottling line.
Yeah.
A lot goes into it. But that being said, I mean, listen, there's a romance to cork, but I'll take a screw cap any day of the week. I mean, it's just, it's going to be fresh. It's going to be good. It's,
You forgot your wine opener in the hotel. What are you gonna do?
Drink it on the boat, drink it on the beach.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, there's something to cork. I mean, I think the more middle tier, higher end wines, I think there's a romance to having a cork in the bottle. But everyday wines, I mean, it's an investment for the winery, it's an investment for the distributor, it's an investment for you buying the wine. You could buy a great bottle of wine while traveling, you're visiting somebody, bring it all the way home, then you open it, you're like, So,
yeah.
it's not a fun feeling,
We have a question from Abby. She wants to know what your personal favorite types of wine are.
Go ahead, Marnie, you start.
So I mentioned that Sauvignon Blanc happens to be my favorite grape. I also tend to like strange varietals. Not that Viognier is that strange. That's a Rhone varietal. I love Viognier. I tend toward the whites because that's sort of more the food that I eat, those kinds of foods. But again, I love sort of the quirky varietals and the quirky blends. And I do like those Rhone reds. So I'm all into sort of the quirky. I'm more of a new world than an old world wine person. So that would mean sort of more domestic, and old world is, France and Spain and the places that have been making wine forever. So that's my palate. How about you guys?
Yeah, sure. So I'm more of a red drinker, Cabernets, Syrahs, Petite Syrah. Petite Syrah is probably my favorite varietal. Just really big and powerful, a lot of expression, a lot of depth. But Cabernet for your consistency and your everyday wine, that's probably where I go. Thinking out of the box, I love to do a Malbec or an old vine Zin sometimes is really interesting. But if I'm held to one variety, it'll probably be Cabernet Sauvignon.
Me, I started with California wine. I grew, working at the restaurants when I was younger, down near Atlantic City, selling actually Liberty School. At the restaurant I worked at, we poured Liberty School by the glass. I was like 20 years old. Now I work for the winery, so it's pretty cool. So I have a love for California Cab. But, if I'm really going to pull something out of my wine rack, have like a nice, something on the grill and, for a few friends over, I love Italian wine. I love, a good, Barbaresco. I love Barolo. I like, old school Italian. I love the flavor profiles. I love Italy. So I worked for an importer, like I said, for a few years. And I just fell in love with it. And so if I had my pick of any wine, it's going to be Italian wine. But domestically, Paso cabs all day long.
And then we have
So somebody said, how
Go
can an
ahead.
unexperienced drinker train their palate for wine? So if I may, I've done a lot of like waitstaff wine training at TGI Fridays. I mean, from everywhere from that kind of restaurant up. And that's probably my favorite thing to do. I love watching people discover wine. It doesn't take a lot of time. Just taste wines. Trust yourself. If you smell pears, you smell pears. You're probably correct in what you're smelling. So and as you go along, you have sense memory. So you know what a strawberry smells like in life. So if you smell it in a wine and you connect to it in your memory, that's sort of how you learn. You just have to keep trying wines and, and trusting yourself and discussing them with people, and they'll throw a word out. And I love to do these kinds of trainings where I say, what are you smelling? And somebody will say, it smells like movie theater popcorn, which is exactly right. And in Chardonnay, you'll get this sort of buttery, toasty. We all know what movie theater popcorn tastes like. So just keep trying wines. That's all I say.
Exactly.
And then we have a question from Jill. She wants to know why there's a cone-shaped hole on the bottom of the bottle.
That's part of the glass making It's how they actually put the two. They connect the length of the bottle to the bottom. It's called the punt of the
Punt,
bottle.
yes. P-U-N-T, punt. That's what that hole is called. And if you notice, some servers will put their thumb in the punt while they're pouring the wine for you. There you go, Shane. Thank you. It's a good way to hold the bottle and pour. If you want to impress your friends, hold it like that.
Today Friday? Or no, it's Wednesday. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn it.
Every day's Friday in the wine business.
And then
True. And in Corona, in quarantine, every day's Friday.
Nick wants to know what's the most unusual thing that you can mix with the wine during wine production.
Hopefully nothing. I don't know.
There is a technique where you use egg whites to fine a wine. It's a technique that would probably be, I guess, the most unique winemaking that you could mix.
Yes.
Other than that, we're not mixing. Typically, we're not mixing anything. It's just a fining agent is egg whites.
And what did you say was the oily layer in the glass when swirling it?
That's the alcohols.
Yep.
So that
Legs.
when you see what they call the legs of a wine, so not so much on my Sauvignon Blanc because of white wine, but when you swirl like this and stop and you see those teardrops come down and that oil line, that lets you know about the alcohol content of a wine. The slower those legs come down, that tells you there's more alcohol in the wine. That's the glycerol.
And what type of wine contains the most antioxidants?
They say red, right?
Yeah, red for sure, more than white.
Any red, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions. So
All right.
thank you, James, Marnie, Shane. I hope everyone out there enjoyed the presentation as much as I did. And as I noted earlier, I'd like to congratulate our graduates out there from the class of 2020. So all, if you'd please join me in raising a glass to our graduates. Congrats and cheers on behalf of the State Office of Alumni Engagement. Fellow alumni, welcome to the alumni community. Again, that's a network of 130,000 strong.
Wow.
All right, everybody be safe and healthy.
Yes.
Cheers. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Alumni, be sure to stay connected. Follow us on social. We'll send you an invitation to connect, and we'll send you a post-event survey. We want to hear from you. Thanks again for joining us, and like the panelists said, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.